Hello, I am Samantha Delakia, and welcome to the Behaviour Pod, your one-stop shop for all chat around behaviour. And this mini-series, it's a serious series. This mini-series has been dedicated to talking about communication, speech and language, because we have been joined by the wonderful, amazing, gorgeous Charlotte, our TBB expert. And we have been tapping into some amazing questions that you have sent over, shared with us, and we're coming to the end now, Charlotte. We've got the final question. Are you ready to delve in with me?
I am so ready, Sam. Let's go for it.
Okay, so the final question, it's a goodie. It says, what do I do while I'm waiting for help? Now, this one I think is a great question because there is such a list or a long waiting list for help, isn't there? And I think sometimes people don't think they can do anything before they get an expert's advice. But you're lucky, guys, because we've got an expert here right now. She's going to give you some advice. What do you think
Yeah,
of this one, Charlotte?
I think, yeah, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. At the moment, like we know that there are so many kids out there who need support with their speech and language development, and there aren't enough speech and language therapists to see all of these kids directly all of the time. So lots of kids at the moment are waiting, and I do think that there's an element of people kind of freaking out and saying like these kids aren't getting supported because there's no speech and language therapist, and obviously that is dire, and that's a sort of separate issue. And there are some kids who really do need to see a speech and language therapist directly for certain things. However, it's a team approach, it's a team effort. And there are so many things that parents and people who know kids well and see them every day can be doing to support these kids. And in reality, often take away kind of workforce shortages, like even like zip back to a few years ago when actually there was plenty of speech and language therapists to meet the need of the kids. A lot of the way that speech and language therapists work anyway is like consultative or through others, like we have a great role in assessment and identifying what kids need, of course. But a lot of the time, we would then be just giving advice to other people who know the kids and can do the work with the kids in their everyday environments to help them effectively communicate with their people in their place, like that sort of thing. So it's not an all or nothing thing. There are things that other people can be doing to support these kids. And I think I mentioned on one of the previous episodes, actually, that there's a checklist on the Behaviour Bank, which just goes through some of the things that you can be doing. If you notice that a child is following maybe a different pattern of development with their speech and language, or you think that they need some extra support in this area, the sort of things that you can be doing. And always the first thing would just start with discussion. So like have a discussion with the other people, the other important people in that child's life about what they have noticed, what their observations are as well. So whether you're coming at this from like a parental perspective or from a kind of educational perspective, make sure that you have a chat with the other people who are working with that child or that child's family to find out whether or not they are noticing similar things to you.
Because we all
That's a
see
great
different,
starting point.
it is, isn't it? Because we all see different aspects of the child, don't we? And sometimes, and I know that I've seen this as a parent, but also as an educator. Um, when I would have parents' evenings and they'd say, this is what we're doing at school. I would say what we're doing at school, and they would say, oh my goodness, they would never do that at home, or oh, they always do this at home and they never do that at school. And I think this is so important. Of course, when we look at TBBS, the behavior balance system, that's why we have this 360 approach. But having those insights from other people in your child's life is such a great opportunity to start any support, isn't it?
Because you're getting a variety of things out of this, right? So you're maybe getting a bit of reassurance that actually sometimes things are better than what you're experiencing. You're also maybe getting some validation that you're not the only one seeing this thing, whatever you've noticed.
Why
But
won't you
then
do
you'll,
that for me? I hear sometimes
yeah,
parents.
yeah. But then also you'll be getting insights as to like if the child does seem to be particularly thriving in one environment over another, what is it about that? Can we learn from each other? Is there something that we can take from what they're doing really well in at school or at home and actually sort of take some of those interests or things that are supporting them and actually use them in another environment? What do you think about this? You know, like problem solving, joint. So there's so many things that you can get out of that discussion. It's not just going to be a case of, well, this is what's happening in this environment, and this is what's happening in this environment. It's a chance to really learn about that child and use that 360 approach to learn about them as a whole, and to share ideas about how they can best be supported. So that absolutely would always be like my first go-to. And with that, I would always say, for me, and you might have some insights to this actually, Sam, as somebody who's worked in a school, I would always just try and encourage people to actually set time aside for this conversation and not try and do it on the school gates as you're trying to throw the kid into the school and there's 100 other kids there and it's all quite chaotic. Like, try and whatever way works for the family and the school to try and carve out time where you can actually have a proper conversation about this.
And I think that's so important. These supportive conversations, and I am a firm believer, and anyone that has followed us online and is part of our community will know this already, but I'm such a firm believer that the only meetings we have with schools, nurseries, parents, collaboratively and collectively, should be of a supportive nature. I don't think that they should ever come with a negative spin. They should never come with an element of punishment, because we don't want children separating their worlds and fearing the collision that is a meeting. And so I think setting time aside, allowing your child to know that that's happening is great as well, because we don't want it to be a surprise, I met with your teacher, or surprise, I've spoken to your parents sort of scenario. And even sharing that ahead of time, so sending an email, making sure that you've got that booked into the diary, so that you aren't sitting there thinking, I've got a million things to do as a practitioner and I'm being caught on the hop. It's such an important one. It really is. And I think it lessens the stress, the internal world, the chaos that it causes, because you're not then as a parent trying to think, oh my goodness, I need to tell the teacher everything that I know right now in like 30 seconds. Or and then you come away and you've forgotten to mention something, or you wish you'd said that differently, or maybe that didn't come across right. It gives you that planning and preparation time on both sides, doesn't it? As an educator or practitioner, it also allows you to be like, okay, what actually is happening? If I've got a meeting booked in a couple of weeks with the parents, or next week, or tomorrow, I'm going to watch that child during this specific amount of time, and I'm going to see what I can bring to the table of support. And I think this is a fundamental when it comes to 360.
Mm-hmm. And then on the back of that, Sam, what you were just saying there about like preparing for the meeting, I would always encourage everyone, regardless of their role, to write down both what they want to have the chance to say and what they want to know the answer to. So there's two slightly different there. You're always going, whatever your role is, you should always be going to offer some information and to ask some questions. So I would really encourage people to think about that before the meeting. And I think writing down is a really powerful tool, whether it's on your phone or you're a pen and paper person, like really knowing what it is. And then when you're in the meeting, being not afraid to get your list out and refer back to that, so that because often, we are all busy. Your meeting might be kind of like your one chance to do it all. So like make the most of that meeting.
Yeah.
And then off the back of that meeting, in terms of like what can actually be done, it's hard for me to say without knowing an individual child, really. Mm-hmm. But it's basically going to be off the back of all that information shared, trying to come up with some sort of joint action plan. So what you want to have is a clear agreement of what is going to be done by who, where. And the key thing that I always think I really would say is the most important thing, but can get missed, is agreeing a timeline to review the action plan.
Yes.
So whether that is, let's try this for the next couple of weeks, and on Friday morning, 2 weeks time, we'll check in and just see how that's going. Or whether that's, we'll meet again in 2 months and we're going to sit down and have another meeting and we will review this written down action plan. It could be either of those things, or it could be, I will call you tomorrow to see if that's happened, but agreeing from all parties when you're going to have done something by, and checking in, because what you really want to make sure is that you're making progress with this child and their support. So actually, if you've all said you're going to do something, but then you forget about it and no one's held accountable to it, or actually it's not gone very well, but no one feels that they've had the chance to actually say that it didn't go very well, or actually it's gone really well and now we need to tweak it because we need something new and different.
Mm.
Like, all of those things are really important. We don't want to miss the opportunity to come together again.
Absolutely. Even if it's just to shut the door, on that. And when we look at, again, this is a huge part in our TBBS setup for the behaviour balance system in terms of supporting and navigating. We've got different roadmaps for behaviour support, but this really does tie in so nicely with that, because when you're thinking about next steps and trying to avoid those spirals of doom when it comes to behavior, or punishment ladders, or and all of those sorts of things, having these alternative and creating action plans, and knowing that you can have a support meeting, and knowing that it will be reviewed, and knowing that you are there together in it, it's going to make such a different vibe for that whole experience, isn't it? Rather than not knowing what you can be doing, you doing one thing, the school doing another, or the school doing one thing, the parents not knowing about it. Having that in place, and knowing, as you said, the accountability is there, because we all forget. We're all human, we're all doing a million things, we all forget at times, and there might be days where you've dropped the ball and the parents pick the ball up, if you're a practitioner, or vice versa. And being able to have that experience together makes such a difference, not only for you as adults, but most importantly for that child.
Absolutely. And then in terms of like the actual what is on that action plan, I would mostly say just start with that discussion, just start with the stuff that's come out of that discussion about how the child is presenting across the different settings and what seems to be helping them, and things that they particularly like and they're good at, working towards their strengths. And if you're stuck for ideas other than that, then there's loads of things on the behavior bank. I think that there's possibly too many to mention in one podcast today, but you're going to be thinking about things like we mentioned on a previous podcast about tweaking the way you interact with your child or the child that you're working with. There's a checklist on the behavior bank about like what makes a good quality interaction, and some tools for kind of reviewing what you're doing when you're interacting with the child. There's also loads on there about kind of using different kinds of total communication approaches, things like visual timetables, how to use signs or gestures. All of that's on there. So there's loads of resources on there if you need ideas, but I would also always just start with the individual child and what you already know is working well, and try and build on that.
And the only thing I would kind of add to that, I guess, is to try and keep it as similar or the same as you can in every setting, in terms of if you're using a particular visual support or something that looks a particular way, or, having that continuity, having that consistency in place for your children is going to make such a difference. Because even, not all brains, of course, but some brains will be affected by a change in color, or a change in image, or a particular sequence not being the same. So we want to make sure that we are looking out for all of our little growing and developing brains, and making sure that they're all feeling that we are there for them, and that we can do that by working together and sharing those resources. So if you are a member of the bank, great. If you're not, where you been? Come and join us. But jokes aside, absolutely sharing those resources with the other side, the other side of the bridge. So if you are a practitioner and you're using something, send it home too. And if you're a parent, you're using something, send it to school as well. So they have got that constant help, and it feels the same, it feels familiar. And it's just I guess a safety element, an emotional safety element for them if they are finding it hard in the moment.
Yeah, great advice.
Thanks. I hope so. Charlotte, this is bringing our final episode in this series to a close. Thank you so much for joining me in the Behaviour Pod, and sharing your amazing and wonderful insights. If you are thinking that you would love to see the gorgeous Charlotte in action, then please do head over to the Behaviour Bank, where you will find all of her wonderful downloadables and short courses and things. But if you are not a member of the Behaviour Bank and you're thinking, I still want to follow this Charlotte lady, like she's pretty awesome, where can they find Charlotte outside of the Behaviour Bank?
Speech therapy with Charlotte. I'm on social media, mostly doing my stuff on Instagram. I also have a website, which is speechtherapywithcharlotte.com. And you can listen to, I have my own podcast, Sam, which is called Just Three Things. And that is available anywhere that you listen to your podcast. So you can tune in and listen to that.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. It's very good. It's very good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. We hope that you have enjoyed this mini series. And if you haven't already, then please do head over, check out the only behaviour bank in the world that has a 360 approach for practitioners, childcare providers, and parents and carers. It is the one-stop shop for all things that impact your child's behaviour. And you can save yourself time, save yourself some energy. You can absolutely give your children the currency of communication that we've been talking about today, and they will profit in the future. I hope you've enjoyed this mini series, and we will speak to you soon. Thanks so much, Charlotte. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.